I entered into a contractual marriage with Ethan Thompson 3 years ago, and we lived together respectfully. Until he suddenly passed away, I discovered his deep feelings for me, which he had kept hidden for over a decade, in his diary. Later, time reversed, and I found myself back on the night of my wedding to Ethan Thompson. He was heading to the guest room with a pillow, and I called out to him. "Let's live together." He nodded and followed me back to the room. Ethan Thompson and I met at a banquet. My family was pressuring me to marry, and he was in the same situation, so we decided to enter into a contractual marriage. After marriage, we did not interfere in each other's lives. I thought I would spend the rest of my life this way, but Ethan Thompson passed away due to stomach cancer. Though we lived under the same roof, our relationship was stranger than that of roommates, so much so that I didn't even know he had stomach cancer for 3 years. As his wife, I handled the funeral arrangements. While sorting through his belongings, I found a diary in the desk drawer of his study. On a whim, I opened the diary, which was filled with entries about me. May 10th, 2019, I never thought I'd see her again. May 12th, we got married, though it was just a contract, but I was still very excited and couldn't sleep all night. May 27th, she didn't come home tonight, and I was worried, but we had agreed not to interfere in each other's lives. June 10th, she noticed my stomach pain today, but I brushed it off. Still, I was happy because she cared about me. Before I knew it, I had finished reading this diary. Many of the things recorded here I no longer remember, or they were just casual remarks, yet he treasured them like precious gems. The sun had long set outside the window, and the moon had risen above the willow branches. I rubbed my sore eyes and looked at the bright moonlight outside the window, feeling a bit dazed. Ethan Thompson likes me? But why didn't he tell me? Compared to the initial indifference, my mood now was tinged with a touch of melancholy. I tidied up the belongings and returned to the bedroom to sleep. But my mind was filled with thoughts of Ethan Thompson, and I tossed and turned in bed several times, unable to sleep. MS. Nina, my friends have already left. I'm sorry, I didn't expect them to stay in the new house for so long. The bedroom door was pushed open, and a low, familiar voice came from the doorway. I sat up abruptly on the bed, looking over in fear. The man was dressed in a well-tailored suit, and even standing there straight, I could feel the cool and elegant aura emanating from him. The person in front of me was none other than Ethan Thompson, who had been buried just a short while ago. What was going on? However, as soon as his gaze fell on me, it seemed to touch something sharp, and he hurriedly turned his head away and stepped back out of the bedroom. I'm sorry, I should have knocked first. Knock? I lowered my head in confusion and realized that my nightgown had already turned into a wedding dress, hanging loosely on my body after my frantic movements, revealing a patch of snow-white skin. My cheeks burned with heat, and I quickly adjusted the wedding dress. All right. Ethan Thompson entered again with a composed expression, picking out a set of bedding from the wardrobe. You can sleep in the master bedroom from now on. I'll move to the guest room. How had I agreed so readily before? As Ethan Thompson was about to leave, the contents of my diary flashed through my mind, and almost instinctively, I called out to him. Why don't we just live together? Ethan Thompson's back stiffened instantly, and he dropped the pillowcase stiffly. All right, all right. Seeing him come to the bedside with his hands and feet moving in unison, with a faint blush on his ears, I suddenly found it amusing. As soon as the words left my mouth, I regretted them. Ethan Thompson and I weren't that close yet, and calling him back had been an impulsive decision. Ethan Thompson seemed to notice my awkwardness and offered to sleep on the sofa in the bedroom, which eased the tension. What had been a restless night of tossing and turning turned into a peaceful sleep as soon as I lay back down on the bed. The next day, when I saw Ethan Thompson returning from his morning run, I had already accepted the fact that I was back 3 years ago. Good morning. Ethan Thompson casually wiped the sweat from his forehead and nodded at me sternly. His tone was as if he were greeting a stranger, without any emotion. After changing his clothes, he hurriedly left, not even glancing at me. This made me wonder if I had misremembered the diary entries, or if they weren't even written by Ethan Thompson at all. Mrs. Thompson, Mrs. Thompson. The housekeeper snapped me out of my reverie. Martha, what's wrong? I asked her. Martha, the gentleman left for the office without even having breakfast. If Mrs. Thompson has time later, could you bring him breakfast at the office? The familiar question brought my thoughts back to 3 years ago, when Martha had asked me the same thing. How had I responded back then? You can take it to him. Martha nodded, seeming to want to say something else. Later, when I saw the untouched lunchbox Martha had brought back from the kitchen, I didn't think much of it. But now, I thought of something and nodded, all right. Martha's face lit up visibly with joy. She hurried into the kitchen to pack the breakfast, muttering excitedly to herself. Mr. Thompson will be so happy. I recalled Ethan Thompson's indifferent departure this morning. Will he really be happy? Half an hour later, I carried a large box of breakfast to the lobby of Thompson Group. The receptionist didn't recognize me and stopped me, but eventually Ethan Thompson's assistant saw me and led me to the president's office. Ethan Thompson was inside discussing business with a manager. Through the closed door, I could hear his harsh scolding, so stern it was almost intimidating. The assistant asked me to wait outside while he went in to inform them. Soon, I saw the assistant tell Ethan Thompson, Mr. Thompson, your family brought you breakfast. No need, tell her to go back. Ethan Thompson looked impatient, his icy voice tinged with anger. Though I'd lived with Ethan Thompson for 3 years, I'd never seen him so cold and heartless before, and I couldn't help but shiver. In the next instant, I locked eyes with Ethan Thompson, who was looking toward the door. He froze, his anger frozen on his face, stunned for a long time. The assistant's voice carried a hint of schadenfreude. Mr. Thompson, I forgot to mention that it was Mrs. Thompson who came to bring you breakfast. Ethan Thompson hurriedly stood up and came over to apologize to me. I'm sorry, I didn't know it was you. Next. I witnessed his flustered state and the faint redness at his ears. Thanks to my arrival, the manager, who had been scolded, was relieved and looked at me with an expression as kind as a Buddha. The assistant pushed the manager out quickly and kindly closed the office door. In the vast space, only Ethan Thompson and I remained. To avoid the awkward atmosphere, I spoke first. This is what Martha asked me to bring over. It seems like there's a bit too much. I placed the breakfast down and rubbed the palm of my hand, which had been pressed against the bag until it was red and bleeding. Ethan Thompson looked at my palm, and a fleeting emotion flashed in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but hesitated, eventually regaining his composure and thanking me calmly. This morning's meeting was urgent, so I didn't have time to eat. Thank you. I said it was no trouble and sat down on the sofa nearby. His movements were subtle, but I noticed that he occasionally covered his stomach while eating. Remembering that he had died of stomach cancer, I pursed my lips and couldn't help but ask. Is your stomach uncomfortable? We've been roommates for 3 years, so it's okay for me to ask, right? Ethan Thompson paused for a moment with his chopsticks in hand. I'm fine. He looked calm, as if I had misread the situation. I furrowed my brows. Really? I tried to recall when Ethan Thompson had been diagnosed with stomach cancer, but I hadn't paid much attention to him before, so I couldn't remember. In fact, I only found out about his illness at his funeral. If you're not feeling well, you should go to the hospital for a checkup. I took out my phone and searched for the doctor's number in my contacts, intending to make an appointment for him. But after just a few seconds, I stopped. Sorry, I think I overstepped my bounds. We had agreed before marriage not to interfere in each other's lives. I fidgeted with my phone, stammering as I stood up, intending to leave to avoid the awkward situation. Ethan Thompson suddenly stood up as well. You're right. Health is the foundation of everything. It's important to get checked. I'll go tomorrow. Thanks for reminding me. His deep, gentle voice calmed my nerves, and I exhaled, smiling at him. Thinking about his work, I didn't linger. When the assistant escorted me downstairs, she was beaming with joy. As soon as Mrs. Thompson appeared, The stern Mr. Thompson softened. If Mrs. Thompson came by more often, Mr. Thompson might never scold us for being clumsy again. Really? Of course. You didn't see how Mr. Thompson was smiling to himself in the office just now. Mr. Thompson must really like you. I tugged at the corner of my lips, neither confirming nor denying it. Back at the villa, Martha saw the empty lunchbox I brought back and smiled happily. I told you, as long as Mrs. Thompson brings it, Mr. Thompson will definitely finish it. After all, Mr. Thompson likes Mrs. Thompson so much. I was stunned for a moment. Why does everyone say Ethan Thompson likes me, but I never noticed before? Even now. When I mentioned this to Sophia with some doubt, her phone rang with her high-pitched scream. You didn't know? Do you remember the wedding dress you wore at the wedding? It was a globally limited edition custom-made design. If you were just a contractual marriage, why would Ethan Thompson go to such great lengths to buy such an expensive wedding dress? Sophia listed everything she had seen. I had asked him about this before. Ethan Thompson just said it was the cheapest wedding dress his family had, and he was making me settle for it. And at the wedding, his eyes were fixed on you, filled with deep affection, and he toasted Mr. and Mrs. Harris so earnestly. That deep affection must have been Sophia's imagination. At the time, Ethan Thompson said it was because my makeup had smudged, so he looked at me a few extra times. I even went back to the makeup room to touch up my makeup. I explained to Sophia. She remained silent for a few seconds on the other end of the phone before sighing helplessly and rubbing her forehead. Should I call you a block of wood or a steel plate? At least you're already married. Otherwise, with your emotional intelligence, you'd end up alone for the rest of your life. Me. But no matter what, I only ever intended to settle down with Ethan Thompson. Now that other feelings are involved, I feel like this arrangement isn't fair anymore. I thought about it all day and finally came to a conclusion. I'm going to divorce Ethan Thompson. The next day at noon, Ethan Thompson came back from work for lunch. I was lost in thought, trying to figure out how to bring it up. Ethan Thompson spoke first. I went to the hospital this morning for a checkup. The doctor said I'm fine. He was referring to the checkup I had reminded him to get yesterday. He remembered. Really? Can I see the results? I asked. I hesitated, worried the question was too personal. However, Ethan Thompson handed me the report without hesitation. I examined it carefully and, after confirming everything was fine, finally relaxed. That's good. You should take better care of your health in the future. Because of my reminder, Ethan Thompson's expression softened slightly, and he nodded in agreement. But this pleasant atmosphere didn't last long before it was shattered by the bombshell I dropped. I flashed my eyes and dared not look at him. By the way, there's something I want to tell you. Ethan Thompson looked up at me. I lowered my eyes. Let's get a divorce. The air seemed to freeze for a moment, utterly silent. His voice was dry and hoarse. Do you have someone else you like? We had agreed that if either of us found someone we liked, we would agree to divorce. I shook my head. No. Ethan Thompson seemed to sigh in relief. Then why, if there's something you're not satisfied with, can't I? I saw the determination in his eyes, and his voice faded away. He suddenly stood up from the chair and left the villa in a hurry. I thought of work and said, let's talk about this later. However, I didn't wait for Ethan Thompson to call later. Instead, I received a call about an accident involving him. Sister-in-law, Boss Ethan has been in an accident. It's urgent. Come quickly. The call came from Ethan Thompson's friend, Lucas. His urgent tone was all too familiar, even after 3 years, instantly bringing back memories of receiving a similar call before. At the time, I was traveling with Sophia to celebrate my freedom from my family's constant nagging. The distance was too great for me to return, so I asked Martha to go check on him. The next day, when I called Ethan Thompson back, he said it was just a prank from his friends and told me not to worry about it. Much later, I learned from Martha that he had been hospitalized that night due to a stomach hemorrhage. This time, I wasn't traveling, and when I received the call again, I immediately grew suspicious and hurriedly asked for the address and rushed over. When I arrived, I realized it was a bar. I found their private room, pushed the door open, and 5 or 6 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I froze in place, feeling tense. "Sis, you finally made it." Lucas stood up and greeted me with a smile. "Is this the urgent matter you mentioned?" I glanced around the private room at the harmonious scene of everyone drinking and felt a bit awkward. It's not an emergency, but Boss Ethan seems to be in a bad mood today. He invited us out for drinks, and once he starts drinking, he doesn't stop. None of us can persuade him. But you know how Boss Ethan's stomach is. Lucas seemed to remember something, and the words on his lips stopped abruptly. He quickly changed the subject. "So, for the sake of Boss Ethan's health, we had to ask you to come and take him home." I looked in the direction Lucas was pointing, and Ethan Thompson was lazily leaning against the sofa, his sharp eyebrows slightly furrowed, and his deep, dark eyes had a hint of drunkenness. It seemed he hadn't expected me to come over, and his expression was momentarily startled. I walked over, pondering how to broach the subject of leaving, when Lucas spoke up for me. "Boss Ethan, your sister-in-law is here to take you home." Ethan Thompson, still intoxicated, reacted slowly, nodding after a moment before voluntarily slipping his hand into mine, allowing me to lead him away. This obedient childlike demeanor made me chuckle. After thanking Lucas and the others, I took Ethan Thompson away. Before leaving, I heard some teasing behind me. "I told you the boss's wife would be effective." Boss Ethan is indeed a wife-controlled man. My cheeks flushed red, and the temperature between my hands suddenly rose. Lucas seemed to have noticed Ethan Thompson's wife-dominated nature, and from that day on, he would occasionally report back to me and pass on messages. "Sis, Boss Ethan isn't listening to you," and started drinking again. Today, a woman approached Boss Ethan, but he didn't even look at her. "Sis, don't worry. Boss Ethan only likes you." "Sis, Boss Ethan told me he doesn't like sleeping in the guest room. Why don't you ask him to come back to the master bedroom to sleep with you?" I looked at the text message I had just received and quietly raised my eyes to look at Ethan Thompson, who was sitting at the dining table with a cold expression. I couldn't imagine him saying such things to Lucas. Perhaps my gaze was too obvious, because Ethan Thompson looked over at me. "What's wrong?" Caught peeking, I panicked. "I just wanted to ask you what movie tickets you bought." "Movie?" "Lucas said you bought movie tickets and wanted to go with me." I instinctively pointed to my phone, but upon seeing Ethan Thompson's furrowed brows, my mind cleared. I'm so stupid. I actually believed Lucas. Ethan Thompson would never ask me to go to the movies. But before I could find an excuse to brush it off as a joke, I heard his reply. "This movie. I don't know if you like it." He handed me his phone. It clearly showed the booking information for a newly released romantic drama. I froze for a moment. He really bought movie tickets? Even after we arrived at the cinema, I was still in shock and confusion, unable to snap out of it. Ethan Thompson seemed to know my tastes well. After picking up the tickets, he even bought me a Coke and popcorn. Romantic movies are mostly about the ambiguous relationship between the male and female leads, and before the movie was even halfway through, they were already kissing. I felt like I was watching a romantic movie with my parents, biting on popcorn, my cheeks flushed red, too shy to make a sound, and silently praying for this scene to end quickly. However, what I didn't get was the scene skipping, but Ethan Thompson leaning toward me. The dim light from the cinema fell on him, softening his cold, handsome features. Everything around us seemed to fade away, as if he were the protagonist of the movie. I clutched the popcorn tighter, my heart racing, and I could even smell the fresh scent of cedarwood emanating from him. For a moment, the atmosphere was tinged with a hint of romance. Almost instinctively, I closed my eyes. There was popcorn on my face. My shoulder was tapped. I opened my eyes and saw a fleeting glimpse of complexity and restraint in his eyes. I was too flustered to think about what it meant. Thank Thank you. I was incredibly grateful to be in the dimly lit movie theater, where I could hide my blushing cheeks. What? He likes me? He must be lying. As if to confirm my thoughts, Ethan Thompson began to avoid me intentionally or unintentionally. Is Ethan Thompson even capable? He's only been married for a few days, and he's already willing to leave his beautiful wife behind to go on a business trip. During my call with Sophia, she spoke on my behalf with indignation. The day after we watched the movie, he told me he had to go on a business trip, and he hasn't returned yet. Maybe it's an urgent matter, I said. Suddenly, Sophia's voice took on a teasing tone. Oh, you've already learned to speak for him. Could it be that you're falling for him? I instinctively denied it. No way. But from the time you called me, you've been talking about Ethan Thompson nonstop, so I'm guessing you've fallen in love, right? I started to feel a bit sorry for Ethan Thompson. Making you, a man who's never been in love, fall in love is harder than climbing Mount Everest. The call went on for a long time, and before I knew it, I had fallen asleep on the living room sofa. In a half-awake state, I felt my body being lifted by a pair of strong, muscular arms. Before long, my entire body sank into softness. A low sigh echoed in my ears, and I couldn't tell if it was a dream or reality. Ning Ning, what am I supposed to do with you? The next day, I woke up in the bedroom. I rubbed my eyes and went out, asking Martha if she had taken me back to the room. Martha looked at me with a smug smile. Before I could decipher the meaning behind her smile, I saw Ethan Thompson coming out of the kitchen. He was back from his business trip? Last night, was it? Martha was about to speak, but Ethan Thompson interrupted her. Martha brought you back to your room. The weather has turned cooler lately, don't sleep in the living room anymore. I nodded, but before I could greet him, his cold gaze swept over me, and he turned and left. After returning from his business trip, Ethan Thompson and I grew even more distant. If we had once been polite to each other, we were now strangers who only nodded in greeting. This situation continued for a week until Lucas called me. Sis, Boss Ethan is in the hospital. When I arrived at the hospital, Ethan Thompson was already lying on the bed, his face pale and lifeless. For a moment, his emaciated appearance overlapped with the image of Ethan Thompson lying in the coffin in my memory. My heart raced, and I anxiously asked Lucas, what happened to Ethan Thompson? Lucas lowered his head, his lips trembling, before finally gathering the courage to say, actually, Boss Ethan has stomach cancer. That's impossible. He was fine when he had his checkup last time. That was a fake report Boss Ethan had forged to spare you worry. In reality, he wasn't on a business trip a few days ago, he was hospitalized for treatment. Unfortunately, his condition worsened shortly after he was discharged. As his words fell, something began to clarify in my mind. During the 3 years we were married, Ethan Thompson was often away on business trips. Sometimes when he returned, his face looked haggard. I thought it was just from being tired from work, never once considering that it might be due to illness. Lucas added, sister-in-law, Boss Ethan didn't want us to tell you about this, but he's been reluctant to cooperate with the treatment. It's my personal request, could you please try to persuade Boss Ethan? If you ask him, Boss Ethan will definitely listen to you. I bit my lip, unable to respond. Ethan Thompson lay in the hospital bed for a long time, from day to night, so long that I thought he might never wake up. Finally, his eyes fluttered open. The moment he saw me, his eyes flickered with surprise, but he quickly furrowed his brows in coldness. What are you doing here? Lucas told me everything. Why didn't you tell me? Recalling how he had even used a fake medical report to deceive me, my voice grew angry. The moment I entered the ward, Ethan Thompson seemed to realize that he couldn't keep this secret anymore. He lowered his dim eyes. I'm sorry. I just didn't want you to worry. After a brief pause, he took a deep breath and continued, also, about the divorce you mentioned last time, I'll have the lawyer prepare the divorce agreement tomorrow. A wave of irritation surged in my heart. I turned my head away and mimicked his words from before, I've been busy lately. Let's talk about the divorce later. Ethan Thompson nodded and replied with a brief "hmm." But when he saw me washing fruits in the ward and helping with the drip, with no intention of leaving, he began to grow suspicious. "Aren't you busy with something?" "Yes, busy staying in the ward to take care of the patient." I plopped down onto the sofa, covered myself with a small blanket, and fell asleep there in the middle of the night, refusing to leave no matter how much he pleaded. Ethan Thompson couldn't do anything about me, so he could only let me be. I didn't understand why Ethan Thompson refused to cooperate with the doctor's treatment. During the days I stayed at the hospital, I noticed several times that he refused the doctor's examinations. In the doctor's words, the patient's will to live was not strong enough. Lost in thought about the doctor's words, I didn't notice that the knife I was using to peel the fruit had cut my fingertip, and blood began to flow. Ethan Thompson frowned and brought some hydrogen peroxide to disinfect the wound. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't have let you touch the knife." It was clearly me who wanted to cut the fruit for him, yet he was apologizing. The hydrogen peroxide touched the wound, causing me to wince in pain. Ethan Thompson apologized again and then moved more gently. The band-aid hurt when he applied it, and he said sorry once more. The repeated apologies in just a few minutes made me feel restless, and I couldn't hold back my frustration, shouting out, I'm sorry, always sorry. I don't want to hear you say sorry. I want to hear you say you like me." The air fell silent. Ethan Thompson looked at me, his dark pupils filled with shock. After a long moment, the light in his eyes faded again, and he struggled to utter a few words. "But I turned my head away and cut him off before he could finish. "So you need to cooperate with the doctor's examination. I don't want to end up a widow." After the impulse subsided, I remembered what I had just blurted out, and my cheeks grew hot. I didn't dare look at Ethan Thompson and took the opportunity when the nurse came in to check on him to find an excuse to slip out of the ward. Perhaps my words had an effect, because after that day, the doctor never mentioned his refusal to cooperate with the treatment again. The doctor found it amusing and would sometimes tease Ethan Thompson about it. We tried to persuade him for so long, but it was his wife who had to come and say it. I shyly averted my gaze, meeting Ethan Thompson's eyes, and my cheeks flushed again. The hospital stay wasn't long. He could be discharged and return home to rest in 3 or 4 days. Though it was supposed to be rest, the moment he returned home, he didn't relax for a moment, rushing straight to the office to handle the accumulated work from the past few days. Even after returning home, he retreated to his study to work. Recalling the doctor's instructions, I burst into the study to drag him out, but as soon as I entered, I saw him frantically covering something on the desk. A brown notebook was hidden beneath the documents. I recognized it as his diary. I chuckled to myself, pretending not to recognize the diary, but my attention was drawn to something else. What was this? I picked up a piece of paper and, after reading the contents, my breath caught in my throat. In bold letters on the white paper were the words "Will and Testament." "Ethan Thompson, this is just in case, don't worry about it." Me, it's not just in case, you've been planning this will for a long time, haven't you? Long-forgotten memories were stirred, and I recalled receiving his will at his funeral. At the time, I didn't understand why he would leave all his assets to someone he had only married in a contractual arrangement. With this fortune, even if Ethan Thompson paused, "You can live comfortably." His figure was blurred by the tears in my eyes. "Don't you understand what I mean?" I stepped forward, tiptoed, and clung to his collar with both hands, pressing my lips against his warm mouth. A gentle breeze lifted the curtains on the windowsill, and vibrant roses bloomed under the moonlight. Ethan Thompson's body suddenly stiffened, and his Adam's apple moved awkwardly. "But I don't have much time left." My choked voice carried a hint of pleading. "The doctor said your stomach cancer is still in the early stages and there's still a chance for a cure. So, for me, please don't give up, okay?" Ethan Thompson bent down, his strong arms wrapping me tightly in his embrace, warm and reassuring. After Ethan Thompson was discharged from the hospital and returned home, Martha kept nagging me, saying that the master should move back to the master bedroom to sleep. The master always forgets the time when he works, and what if he stays up late working in the guest room with no one to look after him? The master isn't in good health. What if something happens to him in the guest room and no one knows? I glanced at Ethan Thompson for help, but he didn't say a word, just smiled at me with his eyes half closed. I had no choice but to nod in embarrassment. Ethan Thompson didn't have many personal items, so moving them to the master bedroom wouldn't take up much space. However, when I saw that there were now 2 towels in the bathroom and the new toothbrush and cup were placed next to mine, I felt the atmosphere had become more intimate. After moving his things and tidying up the bedroom, I took the opportunity to give the room a thorough cleaning, dragging Ethan Thompson around and asking him about various things, throwing away anything he said he didn't need. During the process, I found an album in the bedside drawer. It seemed to be Ethan Thompson's childhood photo album, with all his photos from when he was little preserved intact. However, the album only went up to junior high school, and there were no records of the days after that. I was curious, so I picked up the album and started looking through it. "So you've been frowning since you were little." I pointed to a photo of him when he was 4 or 5 years old and teased him. Ethan Thompson smiled helplessly. I continued looking through the album and suddenly came across a photo of a girl. "Isn't that me in middle school? I don't remember taking this photo. Where did you get this photo?" I recognized the girl in the photo at once. Ethan Thompson tried to hide it, but it was already too late. He glanced at my determined expression, as if I was going to ask him to explain everything, and could only confess to me. "Actually, I've known you since junior high school." Ethan Thompson came from a poor family, but he was always at the top of his class. To win various scholarships, he would always participate in competitions. In junior high school, he represented his school in the national math competition. That day, Mr. and Mrs. Thompson personally drove him to the venue, holding cameras in their hands, excitedly capturing their son's growth. After taking photos of his son, they wanted to take photos of Mom and Dad. Ethan Thompson took the camera and was forced to take photos of his parents showing affection. A gentle breeze blew, and the camera suddenly shifted. The scene of me playing with my friends accidentally entered his frame, and Ethan Thompson said it also entered his heart. His index finger trembled, and he took a photo of me. Later, he learned my name and some information about me from other classmates, and he kept an eye on me on and off for over a decade. Until one day, he never thought we'd cross paths again, but we met at a banquet. After hearing his confession, I smiled and playfully poked his waist. "So someone has been secretly in love with me for so long?" Ethan Thompson chuckled softly and embraced me. "Yes, it's been a very long time." A smile spread across my ears. Fortunately, in the end, he got the girl he wanted. His soft lips pressed against mine, and I clung to his shoulders as my eyes grew hazy. The atmosphere in the room grew increasingly sensual, but it came to an abrupt halt at the edge of danger. A few days later, after a meeting among the attending doctors, Ethan Thompson's surgery date was set. He was wearing a blue and white hospital gown, lying on the bed with a helpless expression on his face as he looked at me. He wiped away the tears at the corner of my eyes and smiled gently. "Why are you crying?" Even though it wasn't the first time I'd seen him lying in the hospital bed, standing outside the operating room with him made my heart race with anxiety. I held his hand tightly and urged him, "Come out quickly, don't make me wait too long outside." His voice was soft and gentle. "That's not up to me." I didn't care. I bit my lip, wanting to say more, but the nurse interrupted me. "It's time. The patient needs to go into surgery." I had no choice but to swallow the words on the tip of my tongue. "Don't just stand there waiting. If you get hungry, remember to eat, okay?" Ethan Thompson sat up, suddenly pulled me into his arms, and whispered in my ear, "I love you." Me. Before I could process those words, the nurse had already pushed Ethan Thompson into the operating room. The heavy door closed, and his figure disappeared from my eyes. I stood there dumbfounded, recalling the sensual words from earlier, sweetness and worry swirling in my heart. A week after the surgery, Ethan Thompson and I returned to the Sue family home. My parents greeted Ethan Thompson with smiles, treating him better than they did me, their own daughter. "Mom, why are you only serving him? You're not serving me anything." I muttered that she was being unfair, earning myself a disapproving glance from Mom. "Don't you have hands? Ethan is still recovering. What's wrong with me taking care of him a little more?" Though our family isn't exactly wealthy, Mom and Dad have some connections. The doctor who performed Ethan Thompson's surgery was a renowned specialist I had my father help arrange. The surgery went smoothly throughout the entire process. So this time, when we went home with Ethan Thompson, it was also to thank Mom and Dad for their help. All right, since he's the patient, I won't hold it against him. I'll serve myself. After lunch, Mom and Dad dragged Ethan Thompson into a lively conversation, so intense that he couldn't handle it, frequently glancing at me for help. I smirked and shrugged. But I soon got my comeuppance. "Ning Ning, your cousin got married later than you, and now she already has a child. When are you two planning to have one?" My mother smiled at me. I instinctively looked at Ethan Thompson, meeting his smiling eyes, and my cheeks suddenly grew hot. "Let's talk about it later." Fearing my mother would press further, I blushed and dragged Ethan Thompson away, taking him back to my room. He was about to speak when I covered his lips with my hand. I glared at him. "Don't say a word." A hint of a smile flickered in his deep eyes as he nodded, "All right." The room fell silent. Though he hadn't said a word, my face felt uncomfortably hot. Ethan Thompson's gaze was drawn to a photo album on the table. After getting my permission, he flipped through it. The album contained similar photos, documenting our growth from childhood to adulthood. However, unlike his album, which stopped after middle school, mine continued up until the day we got married a few months ago. I stepped forward and held his large hand. "Let's record the rest of our lives together, from black hair to gray." Ethan Thompson held me tightly and whispered, "Yes. The words you said to me in the hospital, I don't think I responded to you." "What words?" I blushed and whispered in his ear. "I love you too."